I feel like at this point, it is safe to say that as the book community gets more traction and as the book community grows, reading gets worse.
Right. I want my baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back.
Hey, hi, hello, my name is Fats. Let me explain what I mean when I say that. When I'm talking book community, I don't just mean you and me. The book community is marketing, it's publishing, it's social media, it's trends. The book community is Goodreads, it's Storygraph. The book community is so much more than just the people intaking the books. The book community is how Barnes & Noble decides to organize their stacks, and the book community is who is buying and the numbers and subscription services. The book community is so many pieces that I don't think we really look at. Now, for this video, I have collected a few subscriber opinions, a few things that are making our little corner of the internet very upset. And I've grabbed my tiny little notebook just so that I can kind of piggyback off of the things that I'm seeing you guys are upset with. These are in no particular order. They're just how I've saved them in my phone, and we're just gonna kind of run with this. I do want to start here, and we are kicking it off in the most incendiary fashion. The lack of individual taste in books. Solely relying on bookish influencers to tell us what to read can lead to overconsumption. Disappointing reading experiences and reading slumps that can stretch into seasons and years of not reading, but also just the loss of being guided by what we individually find interesting and enjoyable. Who knows where our curiosity could lead us if we actually read books that came through an inkling or roaming the library. No shade to the girls, but I want to see the algorithm shift to us reading books that send us into little cozy reading rabbit holes. Justice for the art and science nonfictions. Say that with your chest. That made me smile because, yes, oh my goodness, yes. What happened to walking around and not recognizing titles? There has come this feeling in a lot of bookstores, a lot of the smaller indie bookstores. I don't feel this, but I go into a lot of bookstores now and I've seen these titles already and I've seen these things spoken about, but I don't know what happened to being able to walk around and truly feel like I don't know where I'm at. I do get that feeling in like a really good used bookstore. Those ones where like everything is a little haphazard and it's ran by this random old guy that has a plethora of knowledge. In those bookstores, I do feel this. I do feel as if I'm picking up things that I otherwise have never heard of. I'm seeing authors that I otherwise have never heard of. But if I'm going into any store that carries new titles, it is rare that I haven't seen it scrolling or when I'm diving into something and upping my screen time in a way that is unhealthy. I'm not seeing this. And yes to overconsumption core. And I do, of course, I do see the pros of the book community. Of course, I'm not going to come into this and say there aren't pros. As we get more and more people shouting out books, you get this more community feel. You're able to overcome geographical boundaries when you're discussing books, and you're also getting more and more reviews out there. However, the book community is an echo chamber at the end of the day. We're all talking about the same 3 things all the time. And the easiest way to get out of that is to go walk in your local library, in your local used bookstore. The new bookstores are marketed for TikTok reading, for people who are scrolling, but there are still those old dusty little corners that you can hide in that have new adventures that you otherwise have never heard of. And I also feel like this need to read what's new is also adding to this overconsumption core. This, we are reading the same things and we're not getting into our own little science nonfiction, little nooks and finding these new things because of all of these niche factors almost. I want to kind of sit on the concept of niche as well. This feeling that when you come into, like from my perspective, when you come into creating a booktube, it is said, and it is heavily discussed, that you do better if you have a niche, if you're just the romance person, or if you're just the fantasy person. And you do better if you put certain books on your cover screens and you put certain books in discussion, because that echo chamber rewards if you jump on to what everybody else is reading. And recommendation culture then gets better as you jump onto it. And so I read this amazing article. And I really think it plays into this discussion of this lack of individual taste. And and it's called The Banality of Online Recommendation Culture. I found this in the New Yorker. It begins to say, this recent surge of human curated guidance is both a reaction against and an extension of the tyranny of algorithmic recommendations, which in the course of the past decade have taken over our digital platforms. Today's automated social media feeds deliver increasingly indistinguishable content, now sometimes generated by artificial intelligence. In the face of this onslaught, we crave content with evidence that a real person actually stands behind the products or works being touted. Since the late 2010s, publications have run clickbaity guides in the genre of 10 things to watch on Netflix right now. But the genre of personal recommendations became entrenched during the pandemic, when the biggest problem besides avoiding COVID-19 was deciding what to watch next on TV. Later in the article, it goes on to say, in a world of scarcity, we treasure tools. In a world of abundance, we treasure taste. Given that the internet offers us so many options, the choice of what we pay attention to, what to consume, or even what to create matters most. By sharing our taste online, you can develop cultural capital. As Bainbridge put it, making the right recommendation comes with clout. Thus, internet denizens compete to make the best, most authoritative or provocative recommendations. A friend of mine, the newsletter writer Delia Kai, observed to me recently that the digital media landscape often feels like just a list of recommendations on where to get your recommendations. And I want to say, yes, it's me. When I Google and when I look around, it's so difficult to find recommendations. But just like the subscriber comment says, I don't want to mispronounce the at. Atri? I don't want to mispronounce that. But just like the comment says, I miss not relying on that. Even me saying now, like frustrated that, yeah, AI is taking over. Everybody's shouting the same things. Okay, everybody's shouting the same things. Let them do them. Let's go walk in a bookstore more. Let's go pick up things for $3.50 and go, that was a medium good time, but I enjoyed that I tried something new and that I've never heard of. It's such a simple solution. And all these times that I complain about the book community saying the same 4 things. Oh, my library is down the street. I've got 4 libraries in an easily accessible location. Let me go walk some aisles. It's not that difficult. To get into things that are bothering us in the books themselves, though, Poetry Nerd said, a third act / end of book issues that tears people apart, but they get back together anyways. Yes. Now, I do believe, and I do want to say, I think that this concept of a third act breakup does come from the concept of a play, that Shakespearean 3-act structure, the act structure in which you do get a third act breakup or third act problem presented to you to transition you into the conclusion of a story. However, when used in romance, the cookie cutter feeling that comes in romance, when it came in Shakespearean plays, this third act problem wasn't the exact same thing every time. And that's kind of what I want to sit with on this specific comment. The fact that this third act breakup is the exact same in every book. Everybody is miscommunicating. Everybody has a secret. Everybody has walls up. It is the exact same thing that we see every single time. Shakespeare wasn't doing the exact same problem in this third act breakup. However, as our romance novels have transitioned into maintaining this exact same structure, it's almost as if there is this laziness on what we think would be a semi-issue in a relationship. It feels like understanding the depth of two people coming together and two people having a relationship, we forgot that there's so much that two people can have issues with. There's so much in a relationship that could be this third act. If we have to have this third act, two people coming together and trying to have a relationship and two people coming together and building together, there are so many things that we can use to add character depth, to add relationship depth. Because what I think these authors are trying to do is add depth, add understanding, add some sort of growth within this relationship, and seeing these two people as one functioning unit. All authors can think of is maybe these two people don't know how to talk. Maybe these two people have some walls up. There's so much right in grief. Have you ever been in a relationship and one of you is dealing with grief? I've lost a relationship that I miss regularly because I was grieving and I could not fit the relationship that I had with my grief and another person into this like polyamorous cycle, because I was at that moment sitting with my grief in a way that took up most of the bed, and I no longer had space for my partner. That could be a third act. That is real life. Not, oh, you didn't tell me that your ex texted you. If we have to keep this copy and paste structure, if we have to, there are so many things in life that could be that third act. Nessa came in here upset. Goodness, I love you so much. I'm going to do both of these together. My pet peeve would be not proper representation. An author can say this character is blank, but doesn't properly portray that. To me, it's like, oh, look, I def have representation because I mentioned blank once and then never brought it up again. Yes. Just thought of another one. Why are book series not one character focused anymore? Book 1 is the first character we are following, but then book 2 is the side character story, and then book 3 is another? In romance, I think that's fine, but in romantasy series, we have to get to know new characters all over again instead of expanding the world in the next books. Is this a new trend? Let's start with this first one. Representation writing. Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. There was another book that I read earlier this year. I'll put the cover up on the screen, but I can't quite remember what it's called. It was a romance book, a little ridiculous, but it was this representation of this pansexual character that in passing, it was like, oh yeah, this character just sleeps with everybody. And then that was it. That was all that was kind of brought up. There was a relationship with a woman, and then the central relationship was with a man. But this idea that the author put in like one sentence in the beginning of the story that like, oh yeah, I just really, really want pleasure and I'm going to get it anywhere I can. And that was the representation we got for this character. What are we doing here? It is harmful to the community for representation to be a checklist item. At this point, I don't have an issue if you just have a really hetero story. If you have a really cis hetero story, write that cis hetero story. I would prefer you do that than poorly represent just so that you can be put on a list or hit this check mark or be the author that's woke. Being woke isn't incorrect representation. It's the opposite. It's worse. It's like, or I don't know, do your research. Don't say, I want this to be a central thing because I don't see it. You don't have to make it a central thing. Write your little cis het. Cis het can be fun. I have plenty of fun in the cis het. I don't need representation. I love representation. That's not what I'm not saying is I don't want it. What I am saying is I would prefer you write from a place of authenticity. I also want to talk about the book series not being character focused because yes. And I have an example, Powerless and Powerful. There is a scene in this book where a character dies at the end of the first book. The second book is from that character's point of view. And I want to say that the novella in the second character felt like it was doing the work that the first book couldn't. It feels almost as if these other points of view are to duct tape and band-aid over a lack of attention given in earlier books. There are holes, this character isn't fleshed out good enough. And it almost feels like in writing right now, we don't know how to add depth to characters that aren't our main characters. That's what it feels like, because I'm sure you've read books where you have your like main 2 or 3 in the romantasy, and then all of your secondary characters feel like these photocopy cutouts, these cardboard cutouts of characters rather than a fully fleshed out person. But then the author is like, okay, I'm going to make them a fully fleshed out person by giving them a POV. It seems like we don't know how to give our secondary characters depth. You don't need them to be your main character for them to be fleshed out. It feels almost as if there's this gap in understanding with writing. That's what I kind of want to say. Secondary characters feel so flat, but we are heavily relying on the fact that we can add their depth when they get their book. Just write them fully. Just write them fully. They can do stuff. And they don't have to be a tool through which the main character progresses. I do think that is how they're written a lot recently. Let's get into the real villain of all of this, the marketing world. I've seen a couple floating around. New marketing terms, like cozy, getting used on books that aren't. The rise of prequels when the series isn't finished. And personally, we lost a lot when media in general switched to a subscription model. But I'd say we lost more audiobooks than the other kind of book. I want to physically own my audiobooks, and I need the physical media renaissance to include audiobooks. Yes. Let's say that with our chest, because I have a few visuals. In 2020, this is the representation of the format of books that people were reading. 2020 was also the height of the TikTok discourse that audiobooks aren't real reading. Audiobooks isn't real reading. But now, from 2020 to 2022, the jump in the use of audiobooks in that the US is now the hub of audiobook usage. The revenue of audiobooks is 45% coming from the US itself. So it feels like this aversion, but then I know that it comes to where we're putting our money, who we're paying, how difficult it is to actually produce an audiobook. I get it. I got it. Whatever. How about, rather than pushing out so many copies and pushing out all of this printing, we save a little bit of our revenue and make sure that an audiobook is brought out as well. We are so technologically advanced. Why has Barnes & Noble not come up with some sort of barcode that you can tap your phone and purchase your little audiobooks as you go? Why have we not done that? I know it has to exist. I know we have cars that drive themselves. When I go to the bookstore, I should be able to see some books on a shelf, and I can either grab the physical or I can tap my phone. I don't know why we aren't focusing on the fact that this is a very valid way of intaking media, and we are avoiding pushing it in a way that recognizes it as a valid form of media. Possibly ownership, possibly who creates it, whatever. It's aggravating. Let's sit on this cozy thing because I want to talk about these subgenres. Goodness, I want to talk about these subgenres. But we cannot talk about how frustrated we are with things like cozy if we don't talk about the Goodreads hub. Goodreads is such a widely used platform. I do think it's a good group to look at when we discuss these subgenres. Goodreads sparked outcry actually in 2023 with the removal of children's and middle grade poetry and graphic novels from their voting. They also, back in 2019, used to have a cookbook section. They now have replaced it with sections like romantasy. In a response to this outcry, Goodreads has said, "Our goal is to have the Goodreads Choice Awards reflect the books that are most popular with our members. Based on the millions of books added, rated, and reviewed on Goodreads each year. As part of this, we have made adjustments to our categories over time, and this year we will not include children's and middle grade poetry and graphic novels as separate categories. Separately, reflecting the amount of reader interest we're seeing in romantasy on Goodreads this year, we are including this as a new category in 2023. We will continue to have separate romance and fantasy categories. Overall, our community is incredibly diverse in the breadth of their reading, with fans across hundreds of genres and subgenres. Goodreads has been criticized in recent years for the lack of diversity in its award book nominations and selections. This year, readers voiced objections to the changes, citing that the removal of several categories meant for young readers reduces the visibility of both authors and books." Now, the reason that I'm bringing up Goodreads is that it acts as such a functional testing group to this idea that what we see as a genre isn't necessarily evolving as we are, again, nichifying interest. When, as you can see, a lot of YouTube videos, it's no longer romance recommendations. You have cozy romance, dark romance. The amount of niche that we are adding to this concept of reading is hindering reading. I want to say it hinders reading deeply, but I think it almost comes down to the idea of what even is marketing for the book community now. Because back when I was in high school and college, I cannot tell you how I heard about books. There was no aspect to where books were something that I heard about outside of going into places. So it feels as if the idea, the concept, the whole world of marketing for books is new. We're in probably the second or third year that books as a marketed material on a broad sense, like marketed on different waves of media, marketing authors is changed so crazily. Oh my goodness, changed so crazily. Because again, I don't think that high school me had any way of knowing what was new and coming out ever. I never knew when a sequel was coming out. I never knew if an author was writing a sequel. I got a book because I was walking through a place and I saw a thing, and that was that. There was no aspect of reading to where I could see into the future. I knew what was coming. I knew what was out. I knew who was big. I knew who was popular. This popularity contest didn't exist for old reading me. This nichifying of genres, this idea of marketing, the way that it is shaping how we intake reads and how authors write is so frustrating. And the F word that I wanted to drop at Goodreads for saying, we're only doing what's popular. How dare you remove middle grade? How dare that middle grade be removed? Because middle grade readers probably aren't on Goodreads. The parents of middle grade readers are on Goodreads, and we've removed an award section. We've removed comics. We've removed graphic novels. I don't care that it's not the most popular. Do you know how much I just look through this, and the popularity contest of these books feels like we've nominated head cheerleader to class president because she looks good. But we haven't looked for depth. We haven't looked for what's inside of these books. It's really just clicking what you saw is big because we're reading what's big because everybody's talking about what's big. How dare you remove graphic novels? Because I might not be a graphic novel reader, but posting these best graphic novels that others who read graphic novels had voted on would give me a landing base for it. The way that this pushes out genres and pushes people out, the way that we've decided to make cozy fantasy, and we've made romantasy such a big thing. Put romantasy in fantasy. Put it in there. Just let these books battle it out. Oh, but it's, again, Goodreads is a marketed thing. It's here to push, I don't know, what the community wants. It's not my community. I don't want that. I never asked for that. Let's talk about prequels. The rise of prequels. The rise of prequels, written before the end of the book. The rise of prequels. Again, the way that Nessa brought it up, when Nessa brought up how we are writing these series and from different POVs, prequels feel like we have forgotten to include some background. We didn't build the world. And so we're leaning on throwing in this book that gives you a little bit of a background, where instead of just weaving it into your story. Now, the world of prequels, I think, is done so well in movies. There are so many movies that hit the concept of a prequel beautifully. But then when we get the books, when I think of book examples of this, I can't think of many that utilize this building after we've written a timeline. If you really want a flashback, write a flashback. You can have a flashback within the story, but you're not writing a prequel. We're existing within a timeline. We're existing with characters. We're existing with the story. You exist and you live with your characters. Bring that prequel later. I want to sit with marketing a little bit longer and bring up Don't Microwave Cats. Mine is social media portraying books that have darker tones or subjects, or deal with serious topics using just a spice level, or a wholesome story about love after loss or something like that. An example would be Colin Hoover's recent movie fiasco, or Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Like, this book has ED, trauma, gore, murder, and abuse of multiple kinds in it, and you want to write it off as a book for the manic pixie dream girl. Heck no. No, say that, because I picked up boy parts because I saw it marketed as for the Manic Pixie Dream Girls. I had no idea that it was covering these type of topics, and I'm glad I know just because of this comment, because I was going into it as like a silly little. I thought it was going to be a silly little ha-ha, silly little hee-hee. I had no idea that these were the types of topics covered in it. And I kind of want to think about the book community and something that actually bothers me a little bit. Spoiling sucks. Don't get me wrong. Spoiling sucks. However, the way we talk about these book recommendations, we don't want to spoil. We are not talking about them in a fulfilled way. Bringing up that these things happen or discussing the book in a more wholesome way is not done. I recently have been looking at a lot of videos, and I'm glad it looks like YouTube content is getting longer. I think we're coming out of this period where videos were, for a lot of people, about 20 to 25 minutes long. And I'm seeing more hour-long videos, which I'm very happy about, because people's wrap-ups for the month used to be 15 to 20 minutes. And they're just pushing out the like Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Oh, it was just the vibe. Like, oh, the writing was so beautiful. And the way that books were talked about didn't give any type of picture, but I think it's this fear of spoiling and this fear of giving away too much. But I don't know. I can tell you, oh, be wary. There's all of these things that happen, and then this character goes off the deep end. A book should be written well enough to where my 5-minute review doesn't ruin your reading experience. If my 5-minute review takes so much away from the book, that book is bad. And I'll say it for everybody in the back. If my 5-minute review tells you the entire story, it is a bad book. And I think we should hold a little bit less fear doing our wrap-ups to share more and give more. Because the way we talk about books on this platform is very surface level. I think a lot of the community doesn't talk about books in a way that I wish we talked about books. But at the same time, that's comes almost with like a skill level, a skill set. People go to school in order to learn how to talk about literature. People go to school for years to learn how to discuss these things. So it almost feels unfair for me to expect people to be able to do that just because they're having a good time. But at the same time, there feels almost like a responsibility to being on a public platform in a sense. If you're gonna talk about something, keep your audience in mind, keep humans in mind, and understand that this is a public platform, and how you talk on a public platform isn't a type of event. Also, books are amazing. You shouldn't be able to wrap these things up in these quick little comments. Also, I would like to say, just a little offshoot of this. I would like if the dark romance people would be a little bit more forefront about these things as well. Because I heard stalker romance so popular, and I was like, oh, I've never read anything like that. I'm reading monster romance. I thought I could do anything, but the monsters I'm reading about are cute. They're sweet. They're teddy bears. I was not prepared for this stalker romance. Oh, he follows her, to be dark. And also with this, you're on a public platform, YouTube does censor. They censor certain words. But again, there is almost this responsibility to being like, this was so much fun. It's a dark romance. I don't know what dark romance means. It's my first time here. I'm just trying something new, and I thought this would be fun, and I saw this thing trending. I was so unprepared for what I read. And now I know what dark romance means, but it took me entering into something that I was so wholly unprepared for. But to like go back to me. No, I was going to say like, oh, back in the day when I was just walking book stacks and picking up books. But I feel like what we're including in books today, we were not including in books when I was younger. What we are including in literature now is we sit with trauma and bring up trauma in a way that was a bit more, I would say censored. I don't want to say censored, but we approached certain topics with a bit more care, I would say. Because I don't think I have ever, as a child, walking through the library or bookstores, picked up something and felt traumatized by what I was reading. I've never done that. And I would just pick up stuff. I was in the adult section far before my mom would have allowed me to be in the adult section. I was. And I would just be like, I was reading adult books far sooner than my mom would have allowed me. And I never picked up anything like the dark topics I'm seeing today because I'm adultish and I cannot intake these books. I'm getting like so heated reading your guys' comments. I'm going to have to like edit down some of the volume because I'm in my living room literally shouting at you. I have a comment from Black Siren Creates, another journaler on the YouTubes. Honestly, the rise of book talk aesthetic is just blah. Like people admitting they only read dialogue and skip big paragraphs. Also, I feel like publishing is just publishing books to follow trends or what they think will be popular on Book Talk. We get books pumped out like a cookie cutter factory instead of actually good writing or storytelling. I get they have to sell books, but dang, I don't want unedited, uninspired drivel. Say it with your chest. Yes, this feels therapeutic. I feel this in like a, who are we writing for now? I don't feel like we're writing books for ourselves. We're not doing that anymore. We're not writing because we feel inspired about something. We're writing to quickly hop on a trend, to quickly hop on what's cool, to quickly make what is essentially a fan fiction of an idea that people see as popular. We're not writing for us. And writing is creative. It's artistic. And I've brought this up with painting. Do you draw and do you paint to be consumed, or do you draw or do you paint for yourself? And it feels like the writing, even the authors, I would go before the publishers. And I would say that authors aren't writing for them anymore. We're writing for the audience, but publishers might be pushing that. Publishers might. Do you remember way back in the day where the concept of getting a book published was you wrote a book and then you sent it out and prayed that somebody cared. You sent it, you walked, you showed up, you dropped off manuscripts, you huffed it, but you wrote for you. And then you just went out into the world and like sent out manuscripts. And maybe somebody was excited about what made you happy. You remember when that was publishing? The world of I've created something that I've sat with and loved for so long, and there is a large chance nobody will pick it up. There is a large chance that I've sat with this idea for years and nobody will pick it up. I think we've forgotten how creative writing is and how these things are for us. It's for you as a writer. You write for you. You don't write for who's going to read it. I grew up in the era of Wattpad, where you're putting out your silly little, And maybe somebody leaves a comment and it's like, wow, somebody actually read it. But somewhere along the lines, numbers, check marks, clout, this idea that an author is jumping on an idea that feels safe, an idea that they know is cool, an idea that they know will get intaken, and then publishers scouring manuscripts for what they also see is already getting eaten up right now. The amount, to go back to our earlier annoyance with subgenres, the amount of cozy fiction that has come out since Legends and Lattes is so whack. I have one last little bit of rage. And this one, I feel like hits a lot of points that we brought up but also with capitals. Like we hit that caps lock on this one. The amount of books being dumped out en masse to fill the demand for different subgenres that have usually blown up the year prior. I've read some absolute uninspired duds, and I feel like it has to be because people are just glomming onto trends and not writing things that they are genuinely passionate about, have real feelings towards. If that makes sense. Yes, it makes sense. It sure does. Obviously a generalization, but the amount of paranormal romance, cozy fantasy, dark academia, dark romance, etc., coming out back to back is crazy town. And honestly overstimulating to keep up with, and makes me personally check out of all of it. Also, I was at Barnes & Noble today. The insane amount of releasing special editions of books coming out feels like a money grab extravaganza, especially when those sprayed edges come out looking the way they do half the time. Pitiful. Yes. No. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Hi. You say hello. You got to get out of the camera, young man. Go get out of the camera. Did you wake up from your nap? I'm almost done and then we can go. Oh, okay. Right there. Okay. I'm almost done. You sit in your bed. There is a Reddit community dedicated to the annoyance at the sprayed edges. And I've screenshotted a couple of very quality comments in reference to this. Publishers are just in their Taylor Swift era. I would prefer it when paired with better binding quality or for hardcovers, with signatures and not loose glued pages, high quality paper, etc. It's like polishing a turd. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the book in history whose copies with sprayed edges outperformed their original publishing. Fourth Wing. Polishing a turd. I just feel like I understand accessibility. I understand wanting to have something that usually is specialized and quite expensive. Sprayed edges is usually a very specialty, expensive thing. Have you seen the sprayed edges in like people's fairy loot unboxes? I don't have the money for a fairy loot. I don't. But the people unboxing these books, the amount of attention and care given to these special editions, they have inner painted covers. They have the specialty that comes with that being mass produced just feels like people are forgetting that this is a skill. Sprayed edges, decorating, art is a skill that is very prized. And people wanting and being excited, I understand excitement, and I don't want to make anybody feel like I'm like just pooping on your excitement at getting a specialty edition. But they're special. Somebody hand drew out a beautiful idea of a book, and it's going to make it more expensive because sprayed edges is a talent and a skill and an art form, and artists deserve their money. But it becomes like this Temu knockoff idea of we're so used to being able to Google a knockoff version of something and get the cheaper so that we can just feel included in what's trendy and what's special. But we're forgetting that this is a realm dedicated to artists. Yes, the sprayed edges are expensive and the good sprayed edges are expensive, and the mass marketed, we need to stop buying those mass marketed sprayed edges. An artist doing this is so expensive. Rebinding is so expensive. But when you find somebody who has specialized in that work, you're going to get something so amazing and so unique. And honestly, F all the big publishers who have jumped on this and seen something that people are buying and people are excited about and pushing artists out. I am so over artists getting pushed out of their creative spaces, because now it becomes this thing of, I'm sure these artists that do sprayed edges, people are like, well, I can get it from Barnes & Noble for $25. Why am I going to pay $80 for what you did? Because this is art, and there is work, and there is time, and there is skill. Goodness, these ugly, annoying sprayed edges is really removing the fact that this is a talent, and this is something that somebody has worked hard to learn and do well. That is my weekly scream at the internet. This was fun. I liked hearing what you guys had to say and just kind of like getting angry together. I hope that you are walking your stacks and you are finding things and you're enjoying your little interests and you are riding your own wave and discovering yourself as a reader. And I will see you on Saturday. I'll talk to you next time.